Well, we've reached the halfway point, or sort of the halfway point, of Ten of Swords. This is Ten of Swords Stasis, number one. It's a one-shot. This is kind of the middle point, the final wrap-up of everyone getting their swords and getting ready to fight. It's a comic filled with sword gathering, information on the enemies that we haven't seen nearly enough of, and some politics, good old Otherworld politics. How does it do? Hey everybody, this is Perch. We're looking at Ten of Swords Stasis, and in this instance, it's written by Jonathan Hickman and Tini Howard. Interestingly enough, on this issue, Howard is kind of cited first, Hickman second, and then the art is a combo of Pepe Larraz and Mahmud Asrar, sorry. And this is, it blends together fairly well. I think Asrar is definitely given more time here than what was seemingly happening on the previous last week's X-Men. So the art's a lot sharper, I would say, which is a really nice thing. Pepe Larraz is just a talent completely on himself. But we basically, where we are in this event is that the X-Men, or that team, are Happy Mutants on Krakoa or Avalon, have gathered their swords. They've come together. It's been several issues getting them to this point. And they're about ready to head to Otherworld to kind of, go into Saturnine's arena to get ready for this contest. So this issue is heavy on Saturnine, who's getting pretty much elevated as like the big puppet master of all of X-Men lore. But at any rate, we get this kind of first info dump. And then we are basically getting a few scenes that are giving us a little tour of Otherworld. It's a lot of material, a lot of pages to show us the Crooked Market, the Kingdom of Sevalith, the Everforge. Some of these locations appeared in the data sheets that have gone on in previous issues. And so we learned just a little bit more about these different kingdoms and different areas just throughout the world. And this ultimately brings us to a council of sorts where Merlin and Roma, as well as the other representatives from the different councils, are present. We see that old Jamie Braddock of Avalon is got his Mr. Sinister cape on, and basically he is, they're holding a vote, or they're basically casting a vote on kind of being able to cross borders. Brightspoke is asking for open border movement. We're getting a little bit of teases. This feels like one of those elements where there's a lot of world building here, and if you're into this, then you're not getting nearly enough of it. And if you're not into this, then you're wondering why in the hell they're devoting all these pages to it. There's definitely a lot of world building going on with some of these other locations, some stuff that we've seen in the past. So if you're a fan of Alan Davis's old Captain Britain run, some of this stuff is familiar to you. But I mean, some cool enough things. We get some council voting and some various kind of drama, and finally we do get the little brief note, kind of reinforcing the threat of Arakko, which belongs to Amanith, and the fact that they basically invaded Dryador, conquered it, poisoned their oceans, destroyed everyone, killed everything, and have basically taken over this entire land. And so, yeah, nobody seems that alarmed by it. It's all good. And we take a brief visit at that point, because they haven't shown up yet, over to Krakoa, and kind of the final gathering of our champions that are going to be doing this fighting. And so we've got, Captain Avalon, Brian Braddock. We have Betsy Braddock, the new Captain Britain. We've got Doug Ramsey. We've got Magic. We've got Kid Cable, Apocalypse, Gorgon, Storm, and Wolverine as kind of our sword bearers and our champions. And they're the only X people we're going to see in this comic, which, by the way, just for the record here, over in Hellions, there's this, stealth mission of sorts where Mr. Sinister and his crew are going to try and interfere in this contest in some way, steal swords or do something. So we've got that does not make an appearance here, and we're moving kind of right along. And nor do we see kind of Cyclops and the planning that he's got going on with Jean and other things. So this is really about getting the right pieces on the board. We get a brief shot, a really, really beautiful shot here of the warriors of Arakko kind of here, and then in reflection, kind of through the portal, we see the mutants there. Those are really just some nice, very nice pencil work from Pepe Larraz, and some really, really dynamic stuff. So we basically at this point then clip over to the sword bearers, sorry, of Arakko, and then we see their prophecies, and kind of 3 days ago, their gathering of the swords. So we're kind of going back and forth, and we see that they've assembled their own little, Ready Player One kind of area to get the people assembled. But they've assembled theirs with not with runic marks like they did on Krakoa, but dead bodies of this planet that they've conquered. So you just got this bloody Spain battlefield with bloody bodies. We've got a few people here of Summoner, and we have basically the Horsemen here, as well as this mysterious leader who's wearing the mask that taps them into the powers of the Elder God. So anyway, they're off to go recruit people. So first they go and they talk to the equivalent of Doug Ramsey, who's hanging out with the equivalent of Krakoa there, who really wants to be reunited with Krakoa. So they have a brief chat, and the summoner convinces her to come and join the fight, basically, with the promise that these two worlds will be rejoined. As this battle ends, the two worlds will be rejoined. So very, very much the Doug Ramsey equivalent. We then go to the giant crocodile-headed beast, kind of this big hulking thing called Pog, and they brought kind of wealth, and then they promise more conquering, more another world to plunder, and so you got kind of a dragon-like, dragon personality-like giant alligator head dude. And then we get by the Blood Moon, the seducer. So this is, seemingly a warrior. She's been also killing stuff, and they're anxious to get going, and basically is enticed by this contest. We get a couple more of these as they kind of stroll through Amaneth, and they find other people who can kind of join this fight. Sometimes they have to coerce, sometimes they have to basically put all these pieces together. We do not see in this kind of montage a Solemn, who was introduced in Wolverine and in X-Force, and who appears to be somewhat of a breakout villain in all this. But as they're going in there, they get Iska the Unbeaten, who we briefly saw in the Creation comic, and then finally we get the Death Sword here, and so they all assemble. Basically, they assemble on these bodies, and these are going to be the champions of Arakko, who are going to go through this. So we got War, the Summoner, Solemn, the White Sword of the Ivory Spire, Redroot the Forest, Death, Iska the Unbeaten, Pog, By the Blood Moon, and Annihilation are our team that will go up against our group. So that kind of fast forwards us to today, where the mutants arrive in Otherworld. And they're annoyed, kind of right off the bat, that they feel like they're being toyed with, and of course they are. That Saturnine is, basically setting up this giant contest, and they don't like to, basically just be toyed around with this. So Saturnine makes her appearance, looking way too much like Emma Frost, but she's the regent of this land, and they want to freshen up before the evening's feast, and at the feast they will meet their fellow combatants. So they head back to the rooms, and they discover a nice little tarot card that has been left for each of them that are vaguely threatening of kind of all these different areas. So we see that everybody's got a little card, and most are not particularly happy about it. Wolverine is annoyed. Storm is spooked because it shows her writing a death, with the death card basically of her. And Apocalypse looks at his and becomes infuriated. So he doesn't like to be toyed with. He goes up prior to the feast and goes to see Saturnine, and basically comes to threaten her. What is this nonsense? I'm furious. And they've been having some back and forth going on in the pages of Excalibur. So if you haven't been reading that title, kind of explains some of the backstory here. So she's off to her next appointment, and she invites Apocalypse to kind of tag along. She chats with him like, you're very, you're old and you're wise and you've had a lot of conquering. You've done a lot of things, so you shouldn't be impatient. You should let this game play out. She's definitely just toying with him through the entire thing. So as they get to downstairs, they basically get to her next meeting, and they're waiting for her, is Annihilation. And Annihilation is, of course, familiar to Apocalypse. He's stunned to see this mask that has haunted his dreams, the nightmares of kind of this moment that sent him away from his bride, his wife. And as she takes off the helmet, the big shock, it is his wife who has been wearing this, and he is stunned. And she says, "You know how this became to be. This is survival of the fittest, basically." And that's where our issue kind of wraps up. We get another data sheet, kind of again with the reading of the tarot cards. Some people basically got some tarot cards going as part of this event, and they kind of went all way too much into that, but that's fine. So we got a bunch of other chapters coming up here. Throughout November, we're going to wrap this thing up with Ten of Swords Destruction at the end of November. A lot of issues to get through before here and there. You may be wondering about Hellions. Hellions is coming in kind of late in the game. We have it's chapter 18 of 22. So this mission that they're off on that we haven't really touched back in again is seems very auxiliary to the plot, to put it lightly. And of course, this title is listed as Ten of Swords Creation, #1 instead of Stasis, incorrectly in the little data sheet there at the back. So what do we make of all this? Well, this was an issue basically connecting the part 1 to the part 2. And the part 2 is now going to play out with the fights, and we'll see how all those go. There's a couple of kind of ominous things being hinted at here. Definitely, they remind us again that, if people die in Otherworld, they stay dead, or at least they stay dead as they were. So they would come back different. And there's certainly teasing heavily that Storm is going to get killed here and then come back different. She is promised to have a huge 2021, a very different arc for her, and it feels like this is going to be Marvel's way of shaking up that character. But they could also be a red herring that they're teasing with this. Gorgon is kind of your red shirt character here that seems completely to reinforce the stakes early on. Obviously the reveal of Apocalypse, his wife, being Annihilation is not a surprise. They telegraphed that from the very, very beginning. But in general, this is, there's a lot of nice stuff in this comic. It definitely has a lot of lore to it, a lot of depth. It does remind you a little bit of kind of the complexity of Chris Claremont's kind of old epics and what he used to do. At the same time, there's a lot of just talky in this thing that if you're not into that, it's a lot of data being dumped at you. And so it really comes down to this. I think if you're going to like this issue or not, and really this entire event, is if you were following along with Excalibur, if you liked that whole world that Tini Howard had created over there, and you liked the different regions, and you like kind of seeing all these other elements, and this is where you want to see X-Men involved in, then you're probably pretty happy. You're getting a lot of it. On the other hand, if your biggest kind of fondest memories of the X-Men world is really in the Mutant Massacre, Fall of the Mutants type era, then you're probably wondering, how did we get here into this whole space of a lot of things going on? So whether this event ultimately succeeds or fails or is remembered well, I think is really going to be determined in the next 10 issues or so. That's where it's all going to, the rubber is going to meet the road to some extent. That's where we're going to fully... So this has all been kind of lead up to the big fights, and if those fights are entertaining, then a lot of sins will be forgiven. And if they kind of meander, they will not. So pretty much that's what we're going to get. Anyway, what did you think of this issue? Did you read it? Did you like it? Are you on board so far? Are you hanging with this pretty large event? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, follow me on social media, or send me an email, either of those things. But most importantly, thanks for listening.